This is the Arturia Minifreak. It's a bigger, more fleshed out version of another synthesizer, the Microfreak. I've had the Microfreak for a couple of years, and I absolutely love it. In fact, if I had to choose just one synth to bring with me on vacation, the Microfreak is probably the one I'd choose because it's lightweight and extremely versatile. So naturally, I was super excited to hear about this release and to get to check this out. Before we get started, it should be mentioned that Arturia did send me this synth, although they have no say over the content of this video. Okay, let's get started. So right off the bat, the obvious physical difference between the two is this keyboard. This thing has 37 mini keys, whereas the Microfreak, you're essentially just playing metal pads, which are an extension of the circuit board. I just got this, so I'm not going to go into all the features. Instead, I'm just going to dive in and start making some sounds, and we can discover some stuff along the way. So the first thing I'm going to do is choose a synthesis engine. The basic premise of both this and the Microfreak is that they have a large number of different oscillators. For the uninitiated, oscillators are the thing that actually makes the sound on a synthesizer. We turn this type knob and it changes the type of the oscillator. What makes this keyboard, the Minifreak, different from its little sibling is that instead of choosing one oscillator, you actually get to choose two different oscillators and blend them. I'm extremely partial to the bass tone generators, so I'm going to choose that. In general, the way you make interesting synthesizer sounds is by having them always be moving a little bit. Lately, I've been really obsessed with the warbly sound of old tape machines. I want to try to simulate that effect by varying the pitch of my sound. I'm going to do this by means of an LFO, or low-frequency oscillator. There are two LFOs, each of which generates a slow waveform that can be used to apply changes to any of the parameters that make up the sound. In this case, I want to vary the pitch. As you can see, there's a grid here, and you can actually use it to choose what the LFO is targeting. So if you want the low-frequency oscillator to target the pitch, all you have to do is put a little dot next to where it says LFO and make sure that it's in the pitch column. And now I click once, and now I can turn this knob, and I can determine how much effect the LFO has on the pitch. So if I turn it all the way up, it warbles a lot. I just want a very subtle effect, so I'm going to put it around like 15 or something. That's perfect. Now I'm just going to change the filter cutoff. Next, I want to make use of some of those new effects. This is pretty exciting. Remember, the Microfreak didn't have any effects at all. There are 10 algorithms in total, and you can choose up to 3 at the same time. So I'm going to click the wheel, and that has turned chorus on. As it happens, chorus is the effect I was looking for anyway. Next, I'm going to move to slot 3, and I'm going to turn on reverb. Okay, I'm going to save this preset, and let's try to make some music with it. As you can see, I've got Ableton Live set up, and it's listening to all the MIDI notes that the synth is producing. So once I've played something I like, all I have to do is hit the little capture button, and in theory, it will have remembered the notes I just played. Next, I'm going to try to take that and extend it into a full chord progression. One way of taking a simple arpeggiation like this and making it more interesting is to split it apart and have different synth voices play different notes. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to duplicate the clip 3 times. And in one of the clips, I'm muting the first half of each measure. In another clip, I'm muting the second half of each measure. And in the third one, I'm muting everything except those very high notes. Now that I've got those separated out, I'm going to record all 4 patterns with this synth voice, and then we'll move on to the next one. By the way, if you want to know more about my Ableton workflow, be sure to check out the How I Record Synths video I did a while back. Okay, so I've now recorded all of those patterns using that first synth sound. Now let's make another one. So instead of designing the next sound on the synthesizer itself, we can actually use the software that came with this thing. The Minifreak actually comes with a really great VST plugin. The VST plugin actually consists of a full recreation of the synth in software form. Obviously, it doesn't have an analog filter because that's physically impossible, but it has a pretty good emulation. But also, you can use that software, that same VST plugin, to design sounds on your hardware device. Check it out. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click that link to Minifreak button, and that's going to download all of the presets from the hardware device and sync the two up. So now anything I do on the hardware device will be reflected in the VST plugin and vice versa. So the sound we're hearing right now is both the sound of the VST plugin and the actual sound of the hardware device. I don't want that, so I'm going to mute the sound of the VST plugin, and then we can get started building our new sound on screen. The process is pretty much the same as on the Minifreak itself. First, we choose an oscillator. We can use the 3 knobs to further customize the sound. These are the same as these 3 knobs on the device itself. For this preset, I'm actually going to use the second oscillator as well. Next, we cut or accentuate some of the sounds using a filter. And in the final step, we introduce movement into the sound by picking parameters to change and modulate using the LFO and the envelope. I can't state enough how great the Minifreak plugin is. It can show you the actual waveforms that you're producing, which is nice. The synth itself does not do that. Also, modulating parameters is really, really easy. You just click the plus next to any parameter, and it shows you the exact spot on the matrix that you would need to touch in order to link the LFO or the cycling envelope to the parameter. I'm going to try having this synth play the first half of each arpeggiation, and then we can use the synth we recorded before for the second half. Okay, that works. Next, I'm going to record audio from the second voice, and then we can move on to that third voice. I'm speeding up the video so we don't have to watch this in real time. Okay, the second voice is done recording. Time to add that all-important high note. For the final voice, I'm going to move back to the hardware synth. I'm letting Ableton play back the entire loop, and every now and then that note gets hit, and I can hear what the sound I'm building sounds like. So now I'm basically following the same process here as I did for the other 2 voices, with one notable exception. Right now, the sound I've come up with is very noisy. In particular, it has a lot of low-frequency noise. Remember how I said this synth has 2 oscillators? Well, the second oscillator can actually be used as an effect. In other words, it can process the sound that comes out of the first one. I'm going to use an effect called the surgeon filter to get rid of all of the unwanted low-frequency noise. You're only going to be able to hear this on headphones, I suspect, but here's what it sounded like before. And here's what it sounds like now. So all that low-end noise has been taken away. And I think at this point, the only thing left to do to this piece of music is to add some drums. Overall, I think this synth is really impressive. Pretty much any complaint anyone could have possibly had with the Microfreak has been addressed. It has a real keyboard, has true polyphony, it has effects. If you already own a Microfreak, the choice about whether to upgrade will really come down to whether or not you feel you're hitting any of the limits of what that machine can do. As I said up top, I love the Microfreak. I think it's a very capable synthesizer on its own. And there are actually a couple things that the Microfreak can do that this can't do. For example, this doesn't have a vocoder or a wavetable oscillator type. On the other hand, this does have an audio input, so you can use the entire effects engine on an external signal. So there are trade-offs in both directions. Another thing that's worth mentioning is the plug-in version of this synthesizer is available separately, and you can actually buy it. I think it's right now priced at $99. So if you like these sounds but don't need hardware, that's definitely an option worth considering. Okay, I think that's it. If you enjoyed this video, it'd be great if you could hit like. And if you haven't done so yet, now is a great time to subscribe. It's free and you'll be notified whenever I make one of these videos. I've taken some of my favorite sounds from the Minifreak and turned them into a decent sampler library, which is available to patrons. The Patreon is $5, and every month you get to download a new Patreon exclusive sample library. See you soon!